Hi, so my name is Pooja Verma, and I'm an architect in Sydney. I'll be talking about designing for senior care environments. Um, so, so I work for a company called the Flower Architects, and we specialize in seniors living and aged care. When I started working at Call the Flower almost over 6 years ago, I did not fully comprehend what it entails to design for seniors care environments. From the jobs that I've done in the past, I've never done aged care, and the design complexities and the considerations, it was all very new to me, and it opened this whole new world of design. Coming from an Indian family such as mine, there's a lot of stigma behind aged care. It's not something that you really talk about or even consider that your parent, when they grow old, or your relative would go and live in an aged care home or a senior's retirement home. And the same may be for many cultural backgrounds. The reason for the stigma is it's because culturally when we think of aged care, we think of our parent or elderly person being abandoned, or they will go and live in a community where they're not cared for, where their health and well-being is compromised. And that's not the case. And that's where aged care today has become a lot more important as well, because we don't live the way we used to many years back. Back in the days, people used to live in extended families where there was support system, where not everyone used to go to work. So there's always someone at home who could look after an elderly person. But now we live in communities where we don't always live with our loved ones, and our parents live far away from us, and they find themselves growing old by themselves, alone. And the importance, there's need for aged care, and we need to change the way we think about it, and we need to celebrate the idea of aging. We need to celebrate aging, essentially. When designing for senior care environments, consideration needs to be given towards creating spaces that essentially feel like home. We'll touch on the topic of home in the next slide. Need to optimize health and well-being. Need to create spaces where residents feel included in the community and they don't have that feeling of isolation. There's the constant interaction of them in the community and with their family. Need to provide spaces for social participation and spaces that can be adapted for people from different cultural backgrounds. The connection to outdoors is very essential when we design these spaces, because nature, you want to bring that in, and you want to have that connection to nature as well. To provide supportive environments for those disadvantaged, such as individuals with dementia, as you grow older, there's always the chances of getting dementia are higher. And as we find that we have a lot of people living with dementia, and we need to create an environment that's supportive and inclusive to support the needs. Access and mobility is very important when designing for seniors. So when we talk about home, what does home really mean? So home is the definition of home, and trying to create a space that feels like home. It's a very hard thing to do, because home is very different for all of us. What may be home for me, it's different for someone else, and it's influenced by our cultural backgrounds and upbringing. But the one thing that remains the same for us all is our five senses as humans that we can all relate to, is sight, touch, smell, sound, and taste. And as we age, our senses are likely to diminish variably, and we perceive things differently. The intention is to design spaces to create varied experiences for the residents, such as spaces that allow natural light, views to the outdoors, where you can hear the birds, you can smell the food cooking in the kitchen, you feel the warmth of space, and that then you relate to feeling and being at home. So when designing for our senses, the next slides will touch upon the 5 senses and how we can create and have design responses within the buildings to respond to these. So the sense of sight to begin with. Now, sight architecture is dominated by the sense of sight. Aesthetics plays a major role, but it's not just how something looks. Sight loss is very common with aging, and it's more so common with people in dementia. The sense of sight is very important as it has an impact on our biological clock, and it assists us with navigation and wayfinding. The aim of the design is to make the most of the sense of sight and to ensure that we have effective communication with our surroundings, and it provides maximum support for the resident. When we are able to navigate by ourselves, it gives us a feeling of independence and confidence. There are many ways that a design can respond to that. These are just some images to demonstrate that. So signage, of course, having very clear signage around the building. These buildings are very big. Due to their function and operation, they tend to be very big buildings like HK homes. And navigating in them can be sometimes confusing. So the signage has to be very clear. Introducing color, for example, you can have something simple like the doors to the residence room can be of a different color, which assists the residents to find their way back to their room and to distinguish their room from their neighbors. Subtle things like breaking up the panels on the door, having memory boxes at the entry of every door, which, you know, it's their little, they can identify with it, have their little keepsakes in the memory box. It's the entry to their home, essentially. Breaking down spaces in the corridors is one thing that is, I find is really important. The corridors in these buildings tend to become very long and continuous, and you want to make them to feel like a journey, a good journey, an experience, not just taking you from point A to B. So breaking up the corridors by providing a seating area or having a little outlook to the outside, having a window, having artwork along the corridors which residents can pause, appreciate, and continue their journey. Simple things like having a window that a resident can look out when lying down in their bed, for example. They spend a lot of time in their bed when they're in their rooms, and having a window that they can see through while they're laying in bed makes a big difference. They can watch the sunrise, sunset. It tells them what time of the day it is. So they're very small things that we can introduce in our design to enhance the sense of sight. The next is touch. The sense of touch is one of our most profound senses. Residents are always touching various surfaces, consciously, unconsciously, when walking, when touching, grabbing the handrail, opening and closing the door, working on a kitchen bench top. We're constantly touching something. All these subtle interactions through touch impact the well-being of the occupants. The design responses that can be included, including varied textures in the interiors. Transition is very important as it has to be very subtle and even transition between two different surfaces or even two different finishes on the floor. You don't want it to cause any confusion or cause any falls. So the transitions have to be very subtle and even. Along corridors, simple things like the handrails. One of the reasons we use timber in the handrails is because it's a warm material. So when you're walking in those continuous long corridors and you're holding the handrail, it creates that warmth. So these are very simple things, but they have to be informed by responding to these senses. Location of air conditionings and airflow in a building, positioning them such that the air is not blowing harshly on someone sitting on their lounge. And these are some of the things that we can include in our design and think about. Sound. So every building has its own sound. When we enter a building, its volume, its materials, they all absorb and create the unique sound of that given space. Acoustic plays a major role, and we focus a lot on keeping the unpleasant sounds out. You know, you don't want to be hearing the traffic on the road. But you do want to hear the birds chirping. So you need to design so that you include the pleasant sounds and you omit the ones that are not. Music plays a pivotal role in seniors' care, and it's found to reduce anxiety and depression. It evokes positive emotions and creates a feeling of belonging. Music movement therapy is something that I read a lot about, and it's including it in development. It assists the well-being of the residents. Can include spaces like create audio rooms or visual stimulation spaces for engagement as well, including hearing augmentation in building. It assists people wearing hearing aids, controlling transmission of sounds between rooms. These are some of the things that we can include. The sense of smell. So smell is something we always think of as a problem, you know, amid all the unpleasant and hazardous smells in a building. However, good smells benefit our health and well-being. We can all relate to the smell of coffee when we wake up in the morning, which is extremely pleasant. Specific smells, we have heard about aromatherapy and how it can be beneficial, and it has its health benefits. How do we include them in a design or in our spaces? Smell, and we want to include smells that stimulate the senses positively, and how to intentionally include them. Some of the ways we can do that is have resident kitchens that are located closer to the resident bedrooms, have flower, veggie, and herb gardens where residents can spend their time, have good fresh air through the building, and also finishes that can be easily cleaned and that can be sanitized so you don't have any foul smells. And lastly, taste. Everyone loves a good meal. Food makes us all happy. Well, it does. It makes me happy. Food and nutrition are vital for our wellness, and both physically and emotionally, food plays a major role in the way we feel. The type of food that we eat is influenced by our cultural backgrounds and life experiences. How can the design respond to including this? Have resident kitchens so that the resident can go and make their own food as if they were in their own home, and have unobtrusive staff supervision so they can feel independent and they can feel that they're in control. Include assisted cooking activities for residents. Have variety in the food menu and multicultural cuisines. Vegetable gardens in close proximity to kitchens so you can go out, pluck your herbs, get your vegetables, come back, cook. All these enhance a space, enhance the well-being, and make us feel like we're at home. So that covers the 5 senses. So designing design responses that we can include in our buildings to enhance the environment and cater for the special needs of the elderly so that they can continue living a life of dignity, independence, love, and happiness. Yes, so yep, that's all. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Pooja. We have a few questions here. There's a couple of statements. One's a great presentation. They're all great suggestions, and I guess not many consider the basic principles you shared, so thank you. another point was, are you seeing aged care numbers increasing, meaning we need more aged care buildings to be built?
Yes, I think so. In Australia, I feel we do need a lot more aged care, and aged care is something that is continuously progressing, and there are a lot more service providers. It's an industry that is expanding.
And who are your main clients? Are they private sectors or government, and how restrictive are they in adapting these principles?
So we have a range of clients, both profit and for non-profit organizations, and they are very, I think, with the whole Royal Commission and on aged care, a lot of these principles we use in the buildings that we design, and we include them in the design of the spaces. So a lot of these that we've been talking about, we do include them a lot in our designs as well.
And look, I think when people design, they really do need to consider the touch, the five senses that you said, the touch and so forth. And
that's right.
And for the elderly people, they don't get to see family. Some of them probably don't have family left, and they may be there on their own, and their whole sense of family is gone, and this now community becomes their family. And I know it's quite sad to see when you go to some of these aged care facilities and see how sterile they are. All these hard surfaces, they're dark and dingy.
That's right.
Like you said, they've got the metal railings. They're very cold. It is very concerning, because these people are really living their final days within this structure, and if it's not something that's created like a home, then a lot of these people have already died inside. Their souls are gone, and we need to make sure that we still look after these people regardless, and to consider the material aspect is really, really important. But on a positive note, sorry, I don't want to make it sound so true.
No, and I think aged care is changing a lot.
Yeah.
Like in the time that I've worked in the industry, there's a lot of change, positive change, and the interiors of aged care buildings, that we do interiors as well, and there's a lot that's happening in that space as well. And like you talk about, a lot of people in these facilities are not they don't have family, or their family may be really far away. That's why the need for these communal spaces and locating aged care not in a secluded area, but in around residential areas or in a community where they feel connected.
Absolutely.
So I think the whole community aspect is very important.
Yeah, and I think also the smell, like you were saying about the smell of food, and I think it's really, really important, because a lot of those people haven't got the ability to cook anymore. But that sense of smell is something that is unbelievable. So, look.
And plus, we live in such a diverse community. I think food plays a major role in our lives. It's something when it's something you look forward to. You look forward to your next meal. So food plays a major role, and I think that's something that we don't really think about a lot. But offering those variety of cuisines and the ability that the resident has a choice, it's very important.
So we've got a couple more questions here. How do you design to hear birds chirping and negate the truck sounds?
Well, probably have good acoustics, like if your site is located next to a road, but then you can always have internal courtyards and internal gardens that open up to the resident areas, and you can include the pleasant sounds in the building.
Now, have you got any contact details that you can put into the chat? A few people have asked, can they get in contact with you?
Yes, I can put in my email address or LinkedIn profile the way you did for, I can find it.
Okay.
I'll just put in my email address if I can figure out where to type it.
If you go into the bottom where the chat is, can you see the chat?
I do. I can see the question and answers.
Yeah, go all the way to the bottom. It says type message here.
Oh, type answer.
No, you're in the. I think you're in the Q&A. Can you go to?
Yes.
Are you in the chat itself?
I'm in the Q&A.
No, go to the
Oh,
chat.
to the chat. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, I've just put in my email address. That's for my work email address. Yeah.
Perfect. A question from Rav. What is the design temperature in these buildings?
So there is a, I don't know it at the top of my head. There is a Australian standard requirement for the temperature that you need to comply with, that you need to have in these spaces. So I don't know it on the top of my head.
Okay, something we can look up perhaps.
Yeah.
Rodney's made a comment. I think aged care sounds better than a nursing home.
Yes. Well, there are a lot of aged care nursing home. Yeah, probably. Everyone calls it, there's something like every service provider calls it something else. You have residential aged care facilities, you have, yeah.
Fantastic. So look, we really, really appreciate your time this morning. Happy
Well,
International Building Designers Day to you.
Yes, and thank you for
joining.
organizing this. This was great.
Thank you. And if you've got any call outs to your family overseas, say hello. They could be online. Yesterday we had one of the presenters present, and his mum was in the UK watching online.
Oh, okay. Well, I have my families all over. I have, in the US and Africa, so they're all over the place. So yes.
Awesome. All right. So thanks very much.
Thank you.